You may have heard of local fishing derbies giving out small cash prizes to kids and families, but did you know fishing tournaments could be big money? How big? Well, in 2023, during the Bisbee's Black and Blue and Los Cabos offshore fishing tournaments, a Colorado team named Rocky Mountain Hookers won a cash prize of $3.6 million. That's a lot of money. Even when tournaments aren't handing out cash prizes just for bragging rights, there's bound to be some dishonesty and cheating. Just how it is. Hey guys, I'm chuddnelius, and today we're covering the biggest fishing scandal of 2022, also known as the walleye scandal of 2022. Now, who cares about this? Me, I guess. I mean, I've seen some people care about it. It was pretty viral when it actually happened. Before the video starts, let me just state the obvious. I probably sound a little sick right now. You know, being sick, kind of a good thing in this case because I don't really get a lot of time outside of my full-time job to do this sort of thing. And I put a lot of effort into researching this to make a video for you guys. I thought it was an interesting thing. So I'd really appreciate if you put up with the sick noises and the poor quality so far. So thank you for clicking on this video if you did. And let's move right along. Lake Erie, one of the 5 Great Lakes, holds many species of aquatic life. Some of the fish you can find there are salmon, trout, perch, sturgeon, pike, and muskie, just to name a few. But one of the most sought-after fish in the Great Lakes is walleye. According to New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation, 60% of all angling efforts are focused on walleye. Lake Erie walleye that are caught can range from 18 to 28 inches long and between 4 to 8 pounds, but some trophy fish can go beyond 30 inches and weigh over 10 pounds. Walleye prefer deep, cool, and still waters and are often found hiding under structures like sunken logs, tree roots, and aquatic plants. Walleye are predatory fish that feed on minnows and other small prey and are most active at dawn and dusk when they hunt. From what I've been told, walleye are great food fish. Sadly, I haven't had any yet, but maybe in the future we'll give it a try. Walleye are caught recreationally and commercially and can be found in many markets in the states surrounding the Great Lakes and Canada. You can even find fried walleye at the local state fairs. With so many people seeking out walleye, it's only natural that sport fishing would become popular in Lake Erie. The competitions hosted on Lake Erie can be very lucrative. Some of the big ticket items that are won are boats, which can be valued at over $150,000. Anglers can also win cash prizes of up to $50,000 and sometimes other items. Here's some information so you can understand the scale of these tournaments. The number of participants at the 2021 Fall Brawl were 10,574 anglers, and the 2021 Walleye Slam had 7,355 entries. These entries could be multiple person teams or solo participants, so at least 7,355, but most likely more. Entries for some smaller competitions can start at $40, while the cost of entry for larger competitions can be about $400. Participants can also enter for optional categories, adding to the cost of entry. And these categories can be an additional $100 to $200 or more. This brings us to the subject of today's video, the walleye scandal of 2022. Now let's take a look at the timeline of events that led up to the biggest fishing scandal of 2022. In spring of 2021, 2 men started competing in and dominating Lake Erie's walleye tournaments. The 2 men were Jacob Runyon and Chase Kaminsky. As the team continued to win, complaints regarding the pair and the fish they caught were becoming widespread and numerous. The pair's winning streak started to overstay its welcome, and locals became suspicious of the men's behavior. When it comes to fishing, it's not normal for winning streaks to go on for multiple competitions. This is because of the number of variables that can affect fishing and subsequently the results of the competitions. These variables can include weather, time of day, and fish behavior. For example, the predatory response within larger fish may cause them to more readily engage small fish or other animals that swim by. And this is because the smaller animals and fish are a viable food source, and they don't want to miss out on that. Spawning seasons can make fish more aggressive as well, and they may strike at lures and bait without much hesitation. This isn't out of hunger, though. It's out of a territorial response to something coming into their spawning area. In the fall, Many fish will start to hunt and eat more as they sense dropping water temperatures and put on weight to prepare for the winter, or the lack of food during winter. With that being said, sometimes you just get lucky and happen upon a trophy-sized fish that defies all logic and reasoning and just happens to bite your lure. You can fish with a friend and they'll have the same set of variables in the same spot and they still won't catch any fish. In Jacob Runyon and Chase Kaminsky's case, they won 6 or more out of around 10 of Lake Erie's competitions held during the year leading up to the Lake Erie Walleye Trail Championship of 2022. The number of competitions, the prizes, and the money that were won by the men are not well documented, but from the information I could find, it seems the pair won the following competitions. The 2021 BWWC Lute Championship. Lute is LEWT, which stands for Lake Erie Walleye Trail. That's going to get confusing, so I'm just going to reference Lake Erie Walleye Trail as Lute. So anytime you hear Lute, that's what I mean. The 2021 Rossford Walleye Roundup, the 2021 Fall Brawl, and the 2021 Walleye Slam. The pair made an estimated $400,000 in cash and prizes during this time. Now, I have to clarify that there are many categories across all these competitions, and sometimes the categories will change even within the same year. Some competitions have big fish, where the biggest fish wins. You have Fat Five, where the total weight of the 5 largest fish a team catches wins. There's open categories, too, where instead of a 2-man team, a captain only needs a register, allowing a family to participate as a whole. You get the point. So when I say Jacob and Chase won, I really mean they placed high enough as a team to receive cash prizes, and that could be in different categories across different events. And they weren't always first, but at the very least, they did win placements with cash prizes in many of the competitions throughout 2021. While I was researching the BWWC and Lute tournament archives, I found that these pages led to 404 errors. So on their website, you can go into a section that says 20 or Lute history, and if you go down to specific years like 2021 and 2022, some of the pages will be blank or they'll have 404 errors. It just makes things a little bit more difficult. Even when using the Wayback Machine, many of the links did not work properly, or the websites were missing pictures of the results and photos from these events. So a lot of times, instead of having like, a text-based section with all the results on it, they'll have a picture of like a document that held every bit of information to be like a JPEG with a screenshot of the results of the fish's weight or the team's placement, things like that. Suffice to say, in the year of 2021, the 2 men were winning big and more often than any other team in Lake Erie's history. Now that we've talked about the winning streak, let's talk about the alleged suspicious behavior. That is, suspicious behavior leading up to the 2022 event from the 2 men that we're talking about now. After these competitions, most of the fish are cleaned by a third-party company and donated as food to local food banks. Many fishermen from these competitions allege that after the competitions, Jacob and Chase did not donate their catch. This was seen as a strange decision and implied that the men had maybe something to hide. Hiding what? Somebody might ask. Possibly the evidence of the pair's alleged cheating. It's said loosely that like 99% of the fish that were caught by competitors was donated, but some people probably kept their catch too. I mean, they might have just taken it for themselves. I mean, walleye, again, is a food fish, and it's a pretty popular one in this area, so I wouldn't doubt that people want to keep and eat it. But, I will say this. Whenever I've caught like PB, which is a personal best fish of a species, I'll usually release it. In this case, these are like kill competitions, so the fish are going to die anyway. It's depending on the regulations of the event and the state's rules, they might not be allowed to release their fish. So it's a live release tournaments versus like kill tournaments. In this case, it's a kill tournament. So any fish they catch, it's a food fish. And due to state laws, they would have to keep what they caught and then kill it for food. A theory on how the men could have cheated during these competitions soon arose. The theory being that the fish would be acquired before the competition and hidden somewhere on the giant lake. And then on the day of the competition, the fish would be collected and brought back to be weighed. Some think that these fish would have gone bad and then become unfit for consumption and donation, hence why the pair did not donate the fish. Formal protests were submitted to tournament directors, leading to lie detectors being implemented as part of the process for verifying the legitimacy of the competitions. Once the first place winners were chosen, they would then be screened by a local retired police officer. I couldn't find information on if this was a practice that was started because of the rumors against Jacob and Chase or protests regarding other competing fishermen prior to 2021. These lie detector tests were not to be conducted due to hearsay, individual suspicion, and rumors, but for the decided top placements or something similar depending on the competition. The amount of complaints and rumors led to organizers requiring $500 to submit a formal protest and would only be returned if the alleged party was caught cheating. Also, according to the rules, the formal protest must be submitted within 24 hours after the weigh-in. These rules for previous tournaments are no longer found on some of the websites, but some can be found using the Wayback Machine. Due to the lack of evidence against Jacob and Chase, tournament directors had to give prizes to the announced winners. Estimates for the previous winnings from Jacob and Chase were up to $400,000 in cash and other prizes. These tournaments drew in thousands of anglers. The 2021 Fall Brawl had about 10,574 anglers competing, and it's easy to see why there were so many participants. At the 2021 Walleye Slam, first prize was a Warrior fishing boat valued at about $151,670, which Jacob and Chase won. The two men allegedly sold this boat after winning and split the proceeds. The two men were given multiple polygraph tests throughout the duration of their winning streak, many of which they passed. However, one of the men failed their polygraph test for the 2021 Fall Brawl, which disqualified the team from winning. The men lost their chance at another boat, a Ranger valued at $125,000. The Fall Brawl tournament director, Jason Fisher, did not state who of the pair failed. Jacob Runyon was in the process of litigation over the disqualification before the scandal we are discussing came to light. In an article posted to Colorado.com in December of 2021, Jacob Runyon stated, quote, "It wasn't just the loss of a very expensive boat we had rightfully won. It was having our names dragged through the mud and smeared on social media and among walleye fishermen around the area," end quote. I need to clarify that these two tournaments ran at the same time but are different from one another. The 2021 Walleye Slam is a 6-week event that started on October 15th and ended on the 28th of November. The 2021 Fall Brawl was taking place at the exact same time. The men entered both competitions and were able to weigh the same fish at both tournaments. All right, so I'm back in the video. I had to stop recording because my voice was getting messed up because I'm sick still. So if I look worse than I did previously in the video, or I sound different or anything, that's why. Let's continue. The 2021 Walleye Slam is a 6-week event that started on October 15th and ended on the 28th of November. The 2021 Fall Brawl was taking place at the same time. The two men entered both competitions and were able to weigh the same fish at both tournaments' weigh stations, allowing them to participate in both events. Since Jacob and Chase placed first, they are subject to 2 polygraph tests, one from each competition. Jacob Runyon was told the results first from Frank Murphy, who at the time was the organizer for the Fall Brawl. One of the men had failed, disqualifying them from the tournament. The second polygraph for the Walleye Slam came back after, with a pass for both men. In a Big Water Fishing podcast episode released a few days after the 2022 scandal, Craig Lewis, who owns the Walleye Slam, and Jason Fisher, who now owns the BWWC Loot and the Fall Brawl, discussed the results of the polygraph, along with many other things regarding the cheating scandal of 2022. At first, I was confused because when I listened to the podcast, Craig and Jason discussed their thoughts when they received the polygraph results in 2021. And at the time, I was confused specifically about the roles these men played in their respective organizations. We'll come back to this point later. Also, I'm not sure if this matters, but I thought it was interesting. Additionally, the BWWC Loot Championship also ran at the same time as the 2 competitions I just mentioned. It started on the 26th of November, so 2 days before the other 2 events ended. Jacob Runyon and Chase Kaminsky accumulated enough points to be then placed at 11th, which would make them 2021's Team of the Year for BWWC Loot. Again, for people not remembering, Lake Erie Walleye Trail is going to be shortened down to Loot. So if you hear Loot, that's what I am referring to. Leading up to the Loot Championship, tournament director Jason Fisher heard the rumors of Jason and Chase's controversial wins, but claimed to have no experience of the 2 causing trouble within his other competitions. The relationship between the 3 men was under some scrutiny, as Jason Fisher stated that they were good buddies during this time.
And they said it to me. I talked to these guys. They're my buddies. Oh, I'm sick of taking these tests. I said, well, then take second place then once in a while.
You can watch the full Big Water Fishing podcast episode linked below for the interview with both Craig and Jason following the 2022 scandal. Let's skip forward in time to the September 2022 Loot Geneva event, which is one of the 7 events held during the Loot season and is also the event before the Fall Championship event this video is about. The way the tournament determined its winners is as follows. Each team weighs their fish, and the accumulated weight of the 5 best fish over the course of the events are scored. The team with the heaviest catch wins. I believe each event out of the 7 also has its own cash prizes, so if you could only compete for that date, you could still win something. On September 3rd, during the 2022 Loot Geneva event, or 2022 Loot Labor Day event as it's also called, Jacob and Chase had caught 5 fish totaling 37.82 pounds, winning them first place. The second place team's total was 32.63 pounds. Third place was 31.47, and at the 11th place, 28.01 pounds. Now you might be wondering, why did I mention 11th place? Well, I wanted to show you the differences in each team's total weight, which had a range of 4.62 pounds between 2nd and 11th place. So there's less than a half-pound difference between each team until you get to the 2nd and 3rd place, which is just over a pound. Jacob and Chase had a lead over 2nd place of over 6 pounds. This isn't outright suspicious, as you can catch a freak of nature fish at any time, but if the pair was cheating, I thought it was an interesting bit of information. Maybe the men overshot the weight they added, and that added to the suspicion others had towards them. It stated that there were cameramen on the boats of some of the leading teams during the Geneva event, possibly including the alleged cheating team. It said that the cameramen didn't observe cheating, but there were a few points that muddy the waters and make it difficult to understand the statements regarding these events. In the Big Water Fishing podcast episode, Jason talks about the cameras that were following the boats, but states that he wanted the cameras to be switched amongst the participants' boats, but they, quote unquote, wouldn't let him. He doesn't clarify who they are. I'm going to try and give him the benefit of the doubt and try to offer a perspective as well as possible clarification for the confusing way the cameras were discussed in that podcast. I think what Jason was trying to say is that the cameramen on the Loot chase boats would follow a team and didn't want to create more logistical issues by having to switch between competitors. The lake is huge, and the chase boats wouldn't be able to keep track of the location of all the competitors. Something else that is brought up by Jason is that the cameramen are not tournament officials, and they would not be looking for possible cheating. They may not even be fishermen, so even if they are on the boat with the competitors, they probably wouldn't even know what is or isn't suspicious. Still, with the cameramen watching, many of the competitors were catching much larger fish than expected. This includes Jacob and Chase. Jason received pictures and updates via text around 10:30 a.m. that showed the larger than usual fish being caught. This is a quote taken from the post made on the Loot events results page. Quote, "The points leaders gapped the field by 5 pounds and did it with a Loot cameraman on the boat. What an accomplishment. Look for the footage to be released soon." End quote. I could not find the footage that was supposedly going to be released for this event. Also, the points leaders he's talking about are Jacob and Chase. All right, guys, try it again. Another day, another sick me, but we got to get this video out. Long story short, Jacob and Chase would end up winning the 2022 Loot Geneva event. Jason saw this as proof that Jacob and Chase were in the clear, but the rumors didn't stop leading up to the fall championship. The Geneva event did have prize money, and it was combined to be around $36,000 total. About $10,000 was split across the top 5 competing teams. Jason Fisher was now in an interesting spot. He's the tournament director for the Loot Championship. He had to uphold the fairness of the tournament and also maintain order amongst the competitors by dealing with any cheating allegations that would come before, during, and after the event. One of the ways the tournament dealt with this was to have participants submit formal protests, which again cost $500. In the previous 2020 and 2021 seasons, the cost to submit these complaints was $200. In years prior to 2020, I could not find the rules for the Loot tournaments or mention of cost for submission for protests. That doesn't mean the charge was added in 2020 Loot, it's just that I couldn't source the Loot rules prior to 2020. However, the rules from BWWC's championship from 2019 states that an official or participant can submit a formal written protest after the daily weigh-in, but must be submitted to an official within 30 minutes of the daily weigh-in. There was no charge for the submission from what I could see. The 2019 rules were repurposed to be used for 2020 and 2021. The BWWC acquired and owns the loot as of 2021, but was a separate competition of its own. Now you might be asking, why am I bringing up the BWWC rules if it's a separate competition? Well, this is why. Jason Fisher was announced as the 2020 tournament director for the loot on October 22nd, 2019. The BWWC, the Fall Brawl, and the loot are possibly all under the current ownership of Jason Fisher. The BWWC acquired the ownership of the Fall Brawl on December 31st, 2021. An announcement posted to the Loot Facebook page shows that BWWC and Jason Fisher had bought the Fall Brawl. So my point is, the person who changed the rules to charge for submission protests could possibly be Jason Fisher. But I guess we'll never know who edits and changes the rules.
The rules will be posted. I've completed those. They're also on Facebook as a previous edit. So if there's a few words that have changed around, it's because I'm trying to edit that and get it up on the web.
This point might not even make sense or mean anything for the story or to anyone else, but I spent way more time on this last paragraph trying to find information regarding Jason Fisher's involvement with the BWWC, the loot, and the Fall Brawl than anything else during my research. So, yeah, this is my video, and I say what gets to be in the video. Actually, after I took another day to research, I do have something to point out. In the Big Water podcast episode, Jason makes it a point that people should speak up if they think a participant is being dishonest or cheating.
The one thing I wanted to say earlier when you touched on like different kinds of methods is, most importantly, just anglers just police themselves and don't be afraid to speak up. I hear all these stories on, I knew something this time, or my buddy sent me this text message a long time ago, and so this and so that. Man, if you're in this, let people know. If something happens sketchy, let people know. And you're not going to be a snitch or a narc or whatever, but at the bare minimum, we would have never had some worldwide explosion like we had. We could have nipped it in the butt long ago. And guys do a good job of policing themselves, but they don't do a good job of reporting it. All it turns into is gossip. So flip that around and officially report something, and if somebody asks you to do something dishonest, just be the better guy and don't participate. And if it's bad enough, let somebody know.
And to that I say, that'll be $500. I understand it costs money to do a polygraph test, a test that probably isn't going to do anything for you anyways. But I find it interesting that participants and officials have to pay $500 for that test. There's a fine line between gossip and speaking out, but it's even more difficult when the people who are reporting are friends with the tournament director.
And in the Fall Derby, was it last year where they failed Jason, was it last year or the year before where they failed a Fall Brawl lie detector test, one of the parties?
Yeah, it was last year. Yeah.
So, but then where the kind of, I don't want to say drama, but where the things go on is, Craig, then they passed yours, correct?
Correct.
There's water under the bridge, but it's still a hot topic, right? And people want to know moving forward, like, how does a guy pass one lie detector test for the same conditions, same fish, and then not pass another?
Well, I mean, I can't answer that, and I don't believe Jason can either. I know he uses reputable guys. We use reputable guys. Because people have paid money to enter these events, you can't just change rules in the middle. And simply put, they passed our test. I'm required to pay them. I cannot not pay somebody because I don't like them. I don't like their wife. I don't like their dog. We have rules in place and we have to follow them. Things like this happen, and I'm sure, I don't want to speak for Jason, but we'll respond and we'll do our best to try to keep these as fair as we possibly can.
So you asked about, how do we get away from the polygraphs and the tests, and how do you get two different answers? The first and very simple answer is, number one, it's a tool and it's administered by a human being. Okay. And that human being was different when it was taken the first time and then the second time. So two human beings are going to conduct the test differently. They're going to ask different questions, and they're going to get slightly different results.
The winners are already required to take a test anyway if they win. And the only way to report it or protest is going to cost you $500. And it's not even through a public forum. It's through a supposedly anonymous online submission. Do you guys even know how to submit a dispute? So to open a dispute, what you're going to do is once you get to Lake Erie Walleye Trail's website, you're going to scroll all the way down, right? Once you scroll all the way down, go to the very bottom next to tournament rules, dispute form. Open that bad boy up, and then you're going to put your name, email, phone number, street address, all your information, and then obviously the event that you think the cheating happened, subject, and a message for the protest. And once you put all that information in, you're going to hit the CAPTCHA and then send the message to Tournament Director Jason at Loot. And then once you submit the form, you then click here to submit the $500 payment, right? And then this will take you to PayPal. I don't know about you guys, but this doesn't seem very anonymous. I don't even think Jason's a bad guy, but I just wanted to point out some things that I thought were interesting and that could have led to some criticisms about the way things were handled. Now let's talk about the final event itself, the Lake Erie Walleye Trail Championship. Due to a small craft advisory, the 2-day event was shortened to a 1-day event held on the 30th of September. Winds are at speeds of 15 to 20 knots, making it difficult for anglers to fish. Many of the participants didn't even catch 5 fish, and those with the heaviest catches had fish much smaller than the previous event. The difference among the top teams being about 6 pounds or less. As Jacob and Chase unloaded their catch, a crowd had formed and awaited the results. Jason Fisher looked over the team's 5 fish and concluded that each was about 3 to 4 pounds. But as he saw the largest fish, he started to suspect foul play. The fish appeared to have a larger girth to it than the others. The fat one weighed 7.09 pounds. He knew something wasn't right, but decided to wait on exposing the fisherman to the crowd. Once all 5 fish were weighed, the catch totaled about 34 pounds. Jason then asked for a knife and began to cut into the fish. Once he opened up the fish and saw what was inside, he yelled out,
"We got weights and fish! There we go!"
What was inside the fish were multiple 12-ounce egg sinkers and fish fillets. Jacob and Chase had stuffed the fish to tip the scales in their favor.
Holy shit!
Touch these guys. Fucking piece of shit.
How many fucking tournaments have you done this, motherfucker?
Immediately following this moment, the crowd started to form an angry mob yelling many profanities and questioning the team about previous events. Many wanted to know, had they done this at prior events? And if so, how many? Jacob Runyon and Chase Kaminsky had just made international news when they were busted for cheating during the 2020 Loot Championship. A video of the crowd's reaction was released and shared on YouTube. This video garnered a lot of attention online, not only from anglers, but many others outside of the fishing community.
So here's the method they used to cheat. Actually very smart, not gonna lie. Yep. Lead anal beads. They thought of everything.
After this event, what happened to Jacob and Chase? The pair were convicted in May of 2023 on charges of felony cheating and misdemeanor animal ownership, leading to a $2,500 fine each and 10 days in jail. They also had their fish and game licenses revoked for 3 years. The boat that was used during the competitions, which was estimated to be worth around $130,000, was also seized and put up for auction. The 22-foot Ranger was sold in an online auction that closed on the 23rd of July this year. The winning bid for the boat was $82,000, with a final price of $96,288.50, including fees and taxes. The money from this auction was used to purchase a new Lake Erie law enforcement patrol vessel for the Ohio wildlife officers. Seems like a pretty uneventful end to this story, but, that's just how it ended, I guess. Regardless, fun video for me to make. I thought it was intriguing to research, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.